I'm deeply disappointed with this decision. I'm absolutely against this direction, and you say that we are going different directions. No, we are going actually opposite directions.
In my opinion, it's totally wrong decision. In terms of national security, it's absolutely the opposite step. It's like a step back. There was a choice to reach these people and to give them information in their native language and, to integrate them into Estonian newborn society, or reject these people, leaving them in a vacuum.
Also, I have no idea how to address Latvian public if this public treat me like a threat, national threat.
Welcome everyone. My name is Lika Wezloviņa and you are listening Media and Society podcast. These episodes are a platform for in-depth conversations about ways people experience, think and feel about media. Aimed for professionals and media scholars, the podcast explores diverse relationship between media, journalism and audiences in two Baltic states, Latvia and Estonia. Episode 7. What it's like to be a Russian-speaking journalist in Latvia and Estonia. In our previous episodes, at some point we have tackled the topic of Russian-speaking minorities and challenges how to reach them either in Latvia or Estonia, and therefore it's only fair that we try to dive more in-depth into this topic, either from media policy, audiences or media professionals' point of view. In our previous episode, we had a conversation with policymakers from both countries. We talked that many things are similar in both countries, but still in media policy, each country has picked different directions how to reach the same goal. And today we will try to dive in this topic from journalists and editors' point of view, and continuing the tradition of inviting guests from each country. Today it's my pleasure to introduce you with Julia Bali, the editor-in-chief of Radio 4, part of Estonian public service media, and Anna Stroja, the editor-in-chief of Latvian Radio 4, which is Russian-speaking radio channel of Latvian public media. So nice to have you both on this program today.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
In mid-July, Latvian public media announced its midterm strategy also regarding how to reach Russian-speaking population. Maybe, Anna, you could tell us more. So where do we stand regarding content in Russian language in Latvian public service media?
I'm deeply disappointed with this decision. I'm absolutely against this direction, and you say that we are going different directions. No, we are going actually opposite directions, because in the very beginning of the war, as far as I know, Estonian government granted additional investment in Russian media, not only public but also commercial, but Julia will tell us more about it. But Latvia decided to cut funding. Regardless of recommendations of experts, this step was done. This step was covered with a very, excuse me, I will be sharp, but very false explanation about national security. For me, it's also offensive, because I never worked for unsecure Latvia, just the opposite. All my life I worked for integration, and I worked for mutual understanding of communities, and I worked for Latvian stable position also in on regard of communication with Russian diasporas or Russian speakers.
Maybe you can tell for those listeners who are not aware of these decisions.
Yeah. About 1 year and a half ago, so-called national security document on national security was passed by our Saima, and the only date we have in this big plan, it's about 60-page documents. And the only concrete date was January 1st, 2026, when Russian broadcast should stop. So we have no plan about border wall. We have no plan about arm supplies. We don't have any concrete plans in this document except us. And I couldn't understand what kind of logic our politicians have in this document, because a lot of so-called progressive politicians said us, we will correct it. We just need to pass it through this concept for new situation in security. But we have had a year and a half of discussions, and a lot of recommendations were made for or in favor of Russian public media, and it is rejected. And this new reality for us is very, very sad. Not only for me as a journalist, because I have no job perspective anymore. A lot of my colleagues have no job perspectives anymore. Our audience won't have information in their native language, but we have a very big political pressure on us. And unfortunately, also our board and our Council of Public Media just followed this pressure.
You already mentioned that Estonia went other direction or opposite direction. So, Julia, maybe you can elaborate more on Estonian perspective, because in Estonia, both public radio and public television were merged almost 20 years ago. And over these years, as Anna mentioned, content creation also in Russian language has been supported and strengthened and not diminished. So how does it look from your perspective? Can you imagine that it might be the other way around?
I hope I will never ever imagine something like this. I'm really sorry about Radio 4 in Latvia, because in my opinion, it's totally wrong decision. In terms of national security, it's absolutely the opposite step. It's like a step back from the national security. Talking about Estonia, so Radio 4 was created or established in 1993. Estonia regained independence like Latvia just 2 years ago, and it was crucially important because the amount of Russian-speaking minority was, it was bigger in Latvia, smaller in Estonia in total numbers, but still we had about 30% of Russian-speaking minority, and there was a choice to reach these people and to give them information in their native language and, to integrate them into Estonian newborn society, or reject these people, leaving them in a vacuum. Lack of information is a disaster. As we know, we work for media, and information, it's a weapon, actually, being honest. So the government decided that they will create a public radio station, Radio 4, intended for the national minorities, Russian speakers, basically. The next step another government of Estonia did was in 2015. As you probably know, ETV Plus, absolutely Russian-speaking TV channel was created. Of course, we had TV programs in Russian before, but as a part of Estonian broadcasting, we had some programs and news magazines, but not a separate channel. But after the annexion of Crimea and after war in Donbass started, that was another government, But the line they were holding during all these years was the same. So we need these people, Russian-speaking minorities, we need them as a part of the Estonian society. Okay, maybe they prefer to consume information in their native language. It doesn't matter if they speak Estonian or if they doesn't speak Estonian. We need them to be a part of the society, because if they are not with us, if they are rejected, that's a national security issue. So the TV channel was created. And after the full-scale invasion started in Ukraine, that was a very special day for Estonia. It's our Independence Day, February 24. Immediately after the war, the full invasion started, if I'm not mistaken, it was next month, March or something, another government, thanks God we have different governments during these years, another government decided to support, as Anna said, not only public broadcasters like ETV Plus and Radio 4, but also the private broadcasters and online outlets with additional financial support just to give the newsrooms and editorials and board to, involve more journalists to produce more content in Russian, because also that was the issue of national security, and national security is topic number one until this day. So we're really moving in a absolutely opposite direction. If we create this emptiness, if we don't have Russian-speaking media here in Estonia or in Latvia, we create emptiness, but emptiness will be fulfilled with something else. We both know that propaganda channels, TV channels are banned here in Estonia, but they are still available. But maybe those people who consume until that day media content in Russian provided by public broadcaster or private companies, and they were lucky about that and they were happy about that. Maybe if they don't have this content anymore, they start to consume Russian propaganda. And this is the key issue. That's why at least 3 governments of Estonia supported the creation and additional financial support for the Russian-speaking media in Estonia. The core audience is highly educated people, average age 50 plus or something. And I think basically the majority of them are absolutely okay with Estonian language. But if you have a choice, or if you have different channels, you can listen to a morning show on Radio 4, and after that you can switch on Viker Radio, for example. It's Estonian biggest radio station, the public one, and consume some information from there. It gives you just a variety of stations based on local content, because nobody will create local content. If you are interested in foreign policy, geopolitics, and some foreign issues, you can choose from many stations around the globe. But if you want to consume news, information, any kind of content about the place you live, it's available only with the media programs or the media resources based here in Estonia or in Latvia.
And Anna, what is the profile of your audience at the moment? Do you have an idea what will happen with this audience?
Our audience is decreasing constantly. It started to decrease in 2014 just because of our position about annexion of Crimea, by the way. And this is still continuing. Of course, there is another factors as internet consumptions and internet podcasts and internet websites available in Russian as well. So yes, our audience now is smaller than it was before Putin aggression. We just have this burden on our shoulders. We are not guilty, but a lot of people think we are. And audience, there are a lot of people for whom internet is not an option. Yes, it is elderly people. We received a lot of letters now from our listeners. They are very unhappy because some of them are handicapped people, and for them radio is a very substantial part of their life. We received some messages from people who are, let's say, drivers, and for them also the only option is radio in a car. So these people are very unhappy with this decision. And my opinion is that Latvia will lose a lot. Latvia will lose not only listeners, Latvia will lose professionals. Me personally, my plan is to leave Latvia. I don't want to live anymore in Latvia because I received a strong signal I'm not welcome anymore. My native language is an obstacle, is a threat. And for a lot of my colleagues, they have a very similar feelings. And of course, we can say that one aged woman can leave and Latvia will stay. But every person should be valuable for such a small country as Latvia is. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of people just will live in emptiness and vacuum. How many of them are ready to listen to Latvia's Radio 1, Latvian Channel 1? Fairly, I doubt this number will be big because a lot of people just doesn't know this channel. They don't know shows they like, they don't know hosts they follow. So I'm skeptical about it. And I'm very wondering how our Latvian colleagues will fulfill this new task for them to inform minorities. It will be a challenge for them, but I won't help them anymore. I won't help this state anymore.
But is it emotional statement?
Of course it is emotional, because I worked for this radio for 10 years. A lot of my colleagues worked for this radio for 30 years.
But what will happen with these journalists and editors?
I know that some of them maybe will get an invitation from so-called United Public Media, but as far as I know, it could be 3 or 4 people.
From how many?
My channel, we are 24, but we also have sound operators, and we also have colleagues in the website, and some of them will lose their job as well. So it could be about 30 people at least, maybe more. And as far as I know, at least one of my colleagues said that even if this invitation to continue work in Latvian will be get, because still we have no this official invitation to continue our job. This person said, I won't stay. Also, I have no idea how to address Latvian public if this public treat me like a threat, national threat. Sorry. Dialogue is over. For dialogue we need, for tango and for dialogue we need 2. If our government, if our Saima knows better about us, about our needs and information, go. But I won't help them anymore.
Yes, I wanted to continue Anna's thought about radio. Radio, it's a very interesting source of information. It's not just about information. It's about networking, about creating the so-called family feeling and so on. I work for Radio 4 for 20 years. And I know this work. I started from just an editor and now I'm editor-in-chief. But radio is bigger, much more bigger than just information, because you have information in your smartphone. Everybody has information in a smartphone, at least in Estonia, even people over 80 plus. But radio, it's about trust. It's about this warm feeling. If you totally close the whole station, which was crucially important for essential amount of people, it's a disaster, guys, a real disaster. About the professionals, it's a big loss. Really. I'm very sorry about that. I just hope it will never happen in Estonia, because it's totally wrong decision.
Sometimes we heard that even though in one media organization agendas differed and things like that, so what can you say about agenda in Estonian public service media? Do these agendas differ from like Estonian language channel to Russian language channel?
No, not at all. There is no difference. Of course, there are
but
some.
But when about politics or something like
yes,
that?
Yes, we have some special issues which maybe are interested only for Russian speakers, and maybe Estonians don't pay a lot of attention on that, and maybe we give more space, more air on that issues. But it's really small issues, not a huge one. If we are talking about elections, being local elections, parliamentary election, European elections, we all speak about that. And we also cooperate, because we are a national security station in terms of everything, in terms of any kind of crisis. So we cooperate with our Estonian colleagues, discussing issues, helping each other if it's a very specific thing. Basically, they ask us for help if they need to deal with so-called Russian topics. It's not the translated content. Let's be clear. We have our own journalists, our own approach And we ask ourselves, it's not about like translation from Estonian colleagues. No, we have editorial staff and sound designers and technicians and so on, like any other radio station here in ERR. But basically, we are talking about the same things.
I disagree with the statement that we have two parallel informational agenda. First of all, we have the common news desk. So news as a maybe most important part of journalist is the same, or almost the same. We have a very controversial discussion show, and maybe this is the point why we receive some blame. We are blamed by a lot of Latvians because we really invite people from both sides. And we never discuss, let's say, integrational policy among Russians or among the minorities. There is always Latvian guest presented, Latvian politician or Latvian sociologist or Latvian political analyst. My opinion is that this statement about two informational spaces is very popular for politicians. It really gives them a stick against us. Now we are boycotting by politicians because we became toxic. We invite for interviews and politicians don't come, or just several days ago, we have had a minister who said, but please don't attribute that I give interview for LR4. Why it has happened? Because some of politicians decided that's a good social capital to close up Russian media. They are happy about it.
It's awful. We had ministers live. For example, today in a daily show, it was a Minister of Interior. He always uses the opportunity to come to the live studio and he answers the questions. And the last week we had a Minister of Defense who is also native Estonian but who speaks brilliant Russian, and he never ever said, no, I will not come, because he wants to be understood, by the core audience of Radio 4, because he's a Minister of Defense and this is the key issue of national security.
We have heard many times from local, not only politicians, but also from local people of culture. We are not allowed anymore to speak Russian with you. We are not allowed.
Julia, do you speak about self-censorship among Russian language journalists in Estonia? Is it a topic at all? Because in different kind of research in Latvian professional space, there are these topics researched and talked about.
I cannot represent all the Russian-speaking journalists. I'm talking about Radio 4 and maybe ERR's Russian-speaking journalists in general. It's quite a complicated question. During the editorial meetings, we can discuss different issues, and sometimes we are discussing, it's not like how it's better to say about that, how it's better to serve for the audience. For example, in terms of war in Ukraine, we had the same situation as Latvia's Radio 4 since 2014, I think. We lost about 30% of our audience due to our position. And sometimes my editors ask me, Julia, maybe we are, tough enough. Maybe we can be, softer in terms of war in Ukraine, because we're really, really hard talks and hard issues. I said, no, never. But that was the only thing we were talking about. It was not about self-censorship, but, for example, this word occupant or occupation, it's very important word in terms of Estonian history, and it's very widely used in terms of war in Ukraine. Estonia was occupied by the Soviet Union, and now Russia occupied a part of Ukraine. And if you speak occupation or occupant about this Russian soldier who came to Ukrainian, side and occupied and was violent regards the civil population. And when you use this word on air, it's like a related connection with Russian-speaking people who live here in Estonia and considered as the child of former occupants or something like this. So sometimes it's very complicated to use a very specific word, but we'll still do this because we want to be very clear in terms of our statements and in terms of our position. We are trying to create the information bubble with the reliable information, trustful information, where we have fact-checking and we have content control, editorial content control. But clearly, I don't remember these self-censorship issues as a big deal here in this room.
And you, Anna, you think that it is a censorship, not a self?
Because language is not a topic. Language is a tool. Language is a communicational tool. If you reject communicational tool, it's censorship.
Public service media, they expect that people will somehow turn to online media and then they will reach these people there. You were rather skeptical about this. Why I'm asking this, because also Julia, you mentioned that your audience has decreased since 2014. Do you also see that people are like moving towards online more and more?
Well, I think in 3-5 years nothing will change dramatically, but in 15 years maybe we are not needed anymore. I don't know. But this decrease I was talking about was related not with the online media, but only with the content we produced and still producing about the war in Ukraine. But which is more interesting, when the full invasion started in 2022, we lost maybe some listeners, but not a big amount. That means that all those listeners who were not agree with us from the very beginning, they left in 2014 for good. Some of them maybe came back, I don't know, but basically not. And this audience who stayed with us after the war started, they are still with us, I hope, until the end of their lives. And as I mentioned before, online is developing, and of course younger people prefer online, and youngsters will never ever listen to linear radio. It's euphoria sometimes I hear from the members of the board that we can reach younger people using linear radio. No, forget about it. This is just waste of money and people resource. We have to focus on our core audience, offering them not just information, because information is here on my phone, and I said we are a very IT country here, and age is nothing for the online media consumption. But we are bigger than just media. We are bigger than just information. I mentioned this family feeling, and Anna mentioned also this educational programs, for example, about Estonian culture, a very deep approach to Estonian culture, separately literature, music, festivals, architecture, history, all different kinds of history reconstructions. And sometimes we have, by the way, 2% of our listeners, 2% not a big amount, but are Estonian speakers. So I asked some of them why you prefer Radio 4 in Russian. They said you have the best morning show. That's the first issue, because your music choice is absolutely different, and your hosts are so funny but intelligent, and you support me during my morning routine with the positive approach. And also I have a lot of information about that day, a different kind of information, not just a practical one. But the second point why Estonian listeners prefer Radio 4, due to our educational content, so-called cultural content. For example, our colleagues from Estonian stations, they said, well, why? Everybody knows about that. No, And if you have a very good documentary or radio feature, radio drama, for example, it's really, really interesting, not just for Russians. So I think in 15 years, radio will change, but will not disappear. About Radio 4, I cannot predict. I don't know. Because now we are very important. And as I mentioned before, in terms of crisis, a very big crisis, civil crisis or something like war, only 2 stations will broadcast. Bike Radio and Radio 4. This is the national security plan. It's not top secret. But this is the choice of our government. Because people must be respected. In terms of a big crisis, civil or war crisis, we have to inform people about how they should behave inside this crisis. And I think this is what Latvia just lost.
If we recall the name of this episode, so what it's like to be a Russian-speaking journalist in Latvia and Estonia, how would you say, is it easy to be a Russian-speaking journalist in your country?
It's almost not possible anymore. If we are talking about public media, if we are talking about commercial media, yes, it's possible, but ask them about it.
It's not easy. It's not easy to be a Russian speaker at all in Estonia or in Latvia due to political reasons. But in terms of journalism, well, it's not easy because we have more work to do in terms of translation and technical things. But basically, it's not bad. At least now.
On this note, once again, I want to thank both of my guests today, Julia Bali from Estonian Public Service Media, Radio 4, and Anna Stroja, still editor-in-chief of Latvian Radio 4 from Latvian Public Service Media. This podcast is recorded at Riga Students University Multimedia Studio and is part of a research project making sense of media, a non-media centric and open-ended approach to the study of media-related experiences and perceptions. It is funded by the RSU Internal and External Consolidation Project.